We teach everybody at Farah and Farah that the only basis upon which they judge themselves is by the client's success, not your own. This firm has been built over the last 40 years on the trust of our clients, and we intend to keep earning that trust. That's the focus of everybody who works here at Farah and Farah, how they can benefit the client today. Farah and Farah, here for you, here for good.
It's Florida Daily TV, brought to you by FloridaDaily.com. For all your news on politics, business, and education, it's FloridaDaily.com. Now, here's your host, Ed Dean.
Hey, welcome to another edition. This is a good one. They're all good. Welcome to another edition of Florida Daily TV, right here on FloridaDaily.com, brought to you by Farah and Farah. FarahandFarah.com, serving you since 1979. Attorneys you can trust. Looking out for you. That's FarahandFarah.com. Ed Moore. I mean,
yes, sir.
How do I even give a proper introduction with you and Barney? Ed Moore, who is with the group Reset Florida, focuses on a lot of the economy of the comeback here in the state of Florida. He's also one of the political writers as well, among other issues with FloridaDaily.com. And, of course, Barney Bishop, the legend, BarneyBishop.com, who is also a columnist. He's also a political commentator with my radio show, but also here with his articles on FloridaDaily.com. Ed, let me start with you. Barney was on the show recently. We got a lot of calls on this issue. This was a story from thehill.com. We got a story up in FloridaDaily.com as well about how the numbers just in Florida, not throughout the country, but in Florida, where you saw some states, cities like Jacksonville, Duval County, Miami, and Tampa, and thehill.com, which we were doing some research on, they compiled a lot of data, and they showed that right after the Capitol Hill protest and the riots that took place, there was a major surge of people leaving the Republican Party compared to the Democrats. Let me play for you the latest clip right here.
More than 30,000 voters who had been registered members of the Republican Party have changed their voter registration in the weeks after a mob of pro-Trump supporters attacked the Capitol. The massive wave of defections is a virtually unprecedented exodus that could spell trouble for a party that is trying to find its way after losing the presidential race and the Senate majority. It could also represent the tip of a much larger iceberg. The 30,000 who have left the Republican Party reside in just a few states.
All right, so let me stop right there. This is not new, but to see this amount that happened this quick, Ed, and by the way, we had a lot of emails. We took a lot of calls. A lot of people have said, it was more 60-40. I mean, there was quite a few that admitted that they left. They were not happy with what they saw. But a lot of people have also left, not to become a Democrat, by the way. They've left to become an independent. And they sat back and said, we just don't feel that the Republican Party's treated Donald Trump fairly. Ed, I know in 2010 to 2012, we had reported there was 100 plus, maybe 120,000 Democrats that left the Democratic Party under Barack H. Obama and became independents. That's not new. But, Ed, to see this amount pretty quickly, is this a little disturbing, or is this just a bunch of Republicans feel like, hey, man, we got screwed, we're not happy, and maybe maybe we're reading too much into this? Ed, what do you think?
I think there's an equal number of people that are dissatisfied how they think the party treated Trump as how they were dissatisfied with Trump. If you look at the splits on the Biden vote, a huge percentage of people that voted for Biden didn't like Biden, but they liked Trump even less.
Right.
We're just in a transitional era. The more things change, the more they say the same. We go through this periodically. It's a pendulum swing. These people are not switching to be Democrats. They're not switching because they love AOC and the rest of that bunch. They're switching because right now they're dissatisfied with any number of things, depending on where they are on the spectrum. Donald Trump wasn't popular with a lot of people that are registered Republicans, but they voted for him this time because they couldn't stand what was going on the other side as well. We're in such an era of polarity right now. It's going to sort itself out, and the midterm elections, I think, will be really the key indicator of really where people are. They may switch parties, but how they end up voting is going to be the real tell.
Barney, let me ask you this. You were the former executive director here in the state of Florida for the Democratic Party. We always see this happen. But were there a lot of people leaving under Bill Clinton? Were there a lot of people leaving under W and Obama? But we all know it happens. I don't know to the amount. But did we see it this quick within less than Biden's been in less than a month now?
Yeah, well, if you go back, you saw most people joining, not leaving. But, as Ed indicated, this is a natural thing that goes on. First off, we don't know that this hasn't happened before because nobody has said this is a benchmark. Number two, as Ed indicated, they're not leaving the party. And look, what they're looking for is a replacement for Donald Trump. For those of them that didn't like Trump, they're looking for a replacement for Donald Trump that's got the same message, the same values, the same important issues that are critical in their thinking. And they're looking for that new candidate that's going to come out there, they're going to say it in a kinder, gentler way, and is going to do it in a fashion that's going to bring voters back to the table so that Republicans can win. And look, that's what it's really all about. The people that left, they left, it appears, because of the riots. And look, all of us were ashamed of that, but that wasn't Republicans. Those were right-wing
opportunists.
Activists.
Yeah.
And they were the ones that caused the
problem. Yeah, by the way, there were some Republicans and there were a few Antifa, but Ed, we noticed a lot of these guys getting arrested were non-party affiliation. I mean, even here in the state of Florida. Ed, Barney said something on the radio show, and I agree with him that as you said, the pendulum will change. But for example, when I hear people in Florida get ticked off about Mitt Romney or something that happened in another state, and I'm like, wait a second, you're going to let that dictate how you will vote for your local Republican Party and your state party? That doesn't make sense. Why would you get chased off by somebody in another state?
It's the D.C. syndrome. People are so focused on what goes on D.C. in this kind of circumstance, when they really ought to be looking at what's going on in their local governments and their local congressional races. People forget quickly. Trump lost, but the Republicans pretty much swept across the country until Georgia. And Georgia's sort of an anomaly this time. We'll see how that sticks. We get an election in Georgia. One of those Senate seats comes back up in 2 years. That's just a short term. We'll see what the real turnout's there and whether it was a dissatisfaction or they just got outworked in Georgia. The Republicans have done well. And as Barney was saying, you look at it as people are conservative. They're generally center-right. Picks up about 65% of when you poll people. It becomes personality-driven, then that changes. People were not thrilled with Donald Trump. People aren't thrilled with Joe Biden. I mean, there's people that are going to be that way personality-wise. If we can get back to talking about issues and policies and the grounded reasons for people voting, you'll see, I think people will come home. They'll go back to where they feel most comfortable.
Barney, I've noticed, listen, as a reporter, I remember covering Barack Obama won in a landslide. Republicans just, oh my word. I mean, they were almost like, you had to give them Ambien. You couldn't talk to any of these guys for 8. Now, we knew they were going to make a comeback. You saw the Tea Party happen by summertime. They were full throttle. They wrote off the Republican Party. They came back. They didn't take their marbles and leave. The Tea Party, went after Dems and Republicans, and you saw what happened. Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, a lot of these guys that are still there today got elected in a Tea Party. Barney, is this one of these where do you think the Republican Party is just going to chill for a little bit, make a strong comeback? I got to tell you something. They seem to be a little bit I don't know if they're that disorganized. I think some of the Trump supporters are a little, numb. But they always, as Ed says, it's a pendulum change. I expect them to make a strong comeback. What do you think?
Oh, I absolutely do as well. Look, if you look beyond the presidential race and you look at what happened in the U.S. Senate races, and you look especially at what happened in the U.S. House races, none of the procrastinations from the far left media and even what you would consider the mainstream media, which is really the same, it's all fake news, none of that came to pass. And they're within striking distance now in the House of Representatives. Yeah. And that's shocking because you would have thought that 7 million people voting more for Joe Biden than they did Donald Trump, that would have had an impact on local races meaning Congress and U.S. Senate. And it didn't. They did very, very well. And frankly, every day, every one of these executive orders, starting with transgender, starting with the oil pipeline, that job, and then starting with no investigation for oil and gas on federal lands, those are the That's the impetus for a rebound for the Republican Party in the U.S. Congress and the U.S. Senate in 2022.
All right. On the other side, I want to talk about if they're not happy and trying to change things within the Republican Party, what's next? Are they going to form a new party? And how will that dictate what can happen here in Florida? Barney, I'm with you. You just asked the Democrats what it did for them. We'll get to more on this on the other side. Ed Moore, Barney Bishop, I'm your host. Ed Dean, publisher of FloridaDaily.com. We'll be back on just the other side, brought to you by, of course, Farah and Farah. Visit the website, FarahAndFarah.com. You can go see them right here also on FloridaDaily.com. Serving you since 1979. Lawyers you can trust. That's FarahAndFarah.com.
For over 40 years, I've had the pleasure of seeing Farah and Farah grow from just 3 employees
to a team of over 300 across 15 offices.
And though we've become one of the biggest firms in the Southeast, some things have never changed.
Like how we treat every client who comes through our doors.
And how we believe every case is a big case.
Because since 1979,
we've only measured our success by yours.
Farah and Farah.
Here for 40 years, here for good.
Welcome back. Another edition right here of Florida Daily TV, right here on FloridaDaily.com. Brought to you by Farah and Farah, serving you since 1979. Attorneys you can trust. That's Farah and Farah at FarahAndFarah.com. You can see us all right now on Florida Daily TV. Ed Moore, both writers, and Barney Bishop, both writers for FloridaDaily.com. Let me ask you this. There are a lot of speculations that a lot of the Trump guys may try to run into office. There's an old conversation that Matt Gaetz, Matt's entertaining to me, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz may try to run for Agriculture Commissioner out there. Is it one of these where they're so hardcore for Trump that they'll win a primary here, Ed, but is it possible they may not win the general election?
Yeah, well, I mean, take Matt Gaetz as an example. Frankly, I can't see him unless he thinks it's a step later to running for governor or U.S. Senate, why he would leave the platform that he has now. He has a national platform because he's very outspoken. Go into an office here in Tallahassee like Commissioner of Agriculture, he loses that platform. So I don't think that's happening. The saving grace for Republicans and people back when the Tea Party was ascendant, everybody said, oh, it's going to supplant the Republican Party. It didn't. It just didn't happen. It won't happen that way again now largely because the Democrat Party nationally has a way of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. You see the news today, AOC is threatening to run against Schumer in New York, attacking him from the left. They will do that. They overplay their hand. They do it all the time, and they don't spend the time cultivating the bench of future candidates the way the Republican Party has.
All right, let me play for you, Barney. Here is Karl Rove talking about how he thinks the Republican Party's in a, quote, civil war.
The Republican Party is broken. It's fractured. It's in the midst of a civil war. And it's going to be an ugly several years. And it's not going to be 6 months. It's not going to be a year. It's going to be years before the Republican Party can put itself back together.
I think Rove's smart. I heard that back in the day. I heard that after 2012 when Romney was supposed to win in Florida. But anyway, Barney, tell me, the Democrats, do they sense weakness, or is that overplaying their hand in the state of Florida? I think the governor's in a good position to win re-election. Vaccines are coming out. You've talked about this on the show. That's got consumer confidence going to be kicking back up here in a little bit. But what do Dems, conventional wisdom is they normally don't do well in the off year once a party comes in. Is this the Republicans in a civil war, and are the Democrats in a little disarray? Maybe that's not being reported.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think the Democrats are so fixated on Donald Trump. They're scared as hell that he's going to come back and run. Now, as I've indicated on your show before and in my columns, I'm not going to support Donald Trump in 2024. I'm looking for somebody else believes in the same things that he does, but can bring suburban voters and other voters to the table that he had the first time so they can win the election. But look, the Democrats are scared all over. Here in Florida, they lost their butt big time. The Florida Republican Party outworked them. They got more people registered to vote and more people out to vote. And they even cut into the majorities down in Southeast Florida by a significant margin. As far as the Republican Party, Karl Rove would know this much better than I, but I would say that my only perception is that there's disorganization at the national level in the U.S. Senate, and in the U.S. Congress. And I think that's because there's this tug and this pull between Trumpers and the people that want to go past Trump. And I think that what we have to do is find the common ground. People like Mitt Romney, Linda Murkowski, those are not helpful people. Ben Sasse, forget them. As far as I'm concerned, they're not Republicans. They're rhinos. And that's the problem that we really have, because while the Democrats have consistently been able to maintain voting together in a block in both the House and in the U.S. Senate, the Republicans have not. And Mitch McConnell's had to spend an extraordinary amount of time keeping that caucus together. And it's only going to get worse because they don't have a president now to get behind, or a titular leader of the party.
Ed, I should be saving this for another edition. Both of you talked about how the Democrats overplay their hand. They talk about another party for the Republicans right now. I think the Republicans need to get in check. The Libertarian hurt Donald Trump in several states. Ask Ralph Nader what happened to Al Gore in 2000. The Democrats still blame Jill Stein, the Green Party, for 2016. But this is a little topic. Man, I can spend an hour on this part right here. I think you get Gwen Graham. I'm not saying I think it's going to be a good race if she ran. Nikki Fried, I think if there is a heavy primary in the state of Florida with Nikki Fried, Gwen Graham, I think it's going to hurt them. I think Ron DeSantis walks in pretty easily. Having said this, Charlie Crist, I find so entertaining. I've covered him for years. Probably one of the best wholesale elected officials out there, but I don't think he was that great of a governor out there. There is a lot of Democrats writing articles in other publications, not in ours, at Florida Daily, but they are begging and pleading about Charlie Crist. Please don't run. I was like, come on, Ed, is this the flavor? Is Charlie enjoying this? You think Charlie Crist? Because if he does, I think you're right. The Democrats are overplaying their hand. What do you think's going on with Charlie Crist? Congressman in Southwest Florida looking to run for governor on the Democratic side.
I think he's probably sincerely entertaining the thought, but it's I wouldn't go as far as say is delusional, but he's overplayed his hand before and got it handed to him and found a niche for himself in that little congressional seat there. He ought to stay there.
Right. But let me real quick.
His appeal. You remember, Florida grows quickly. We've got new voters here all the time, and people with names that were in office yesterday are not known by so many of the voters in Florida.
Totally agree. I got a couple minutes left. Barney, what do you think? Charlie Crist? I mean, good. I mean, I've seen a lot. Some of my Republican friends think he's going to do it. What do you think?
Well, I hope he runs again, because I tell you what, he's going to lose again. You can't take somebody that was a Republican, then became an independent, and then became a Democrat. He didn't win last time. He's not going to win this time. Governor DeSantis is, as you indicated, Ed, I agree with you, going to walk away with this election. When I say walk away, he's going to win by a bigger margin than he did last time. But let me tell you, the dynamics in the Democratic Party is going to be pretty tough for him. You're going to have a white guy and Charlie Crist running against two white women, Nikki Fried and Gwen Graham. And there's going to be a lot of tension there because the Democrats are going to want to put up a woman. So that gives Charlie a problem. Maybe not, actually.
That's funny. I caught that.
But in any event, Nikki and Gwen is going to be a monumental battle. It is going to be all out, and it's going to tear apart the Democratic Party, and they're going to be divided going into the general election.
Right.
And Ron DeSantis, again, regardless whether the Democrats are united or not, Ron DeSantis is going to win.
Ed, I'm going to give you the last word. I'm going to tell you what's holding off. I was talking with House leadership the other day. They have said because of the census, could have been related to COVID or whatever, they say now that they may not know. We're talking not only congressional but state. We may not know anything till July now on the numbers, which means I'm thinking now. Ed, I'm going to give you the last word. If Charlie Crist gets even close to more where they say it's leaning him, but where he could possibly lose, bam! I think, or they write him out unless he runs against another Democrat in another congressional district. I think he does run for governor.
You really do? I don't. I just think. It's an aspiration. I guess the old saying, a man's reach should exceed his grasp.
But I don't want to lose a congressional seat. I'm with you on that. I'm just saying, if I know I'm maybe losing a seat, I may go for plan B. That's what I was getting at. So
that district will be drawn for him. It's such an insider's game when they start drawing those districts. If you're an incumbent, rarely does an incumbent really get stepped on unless you got to create a new district. And that's,
Well,
yeah,
there
that's
could be
what we
3
don't
of them.
know.
Who knows? All right. Ed Moore. Good to see you. Barney Bishop, good to see you. Love the background, Barney. Look, everything looks good, man. So anyway, and all of you, I like to big fish with Ed. Listen, Ed Moore, Barney Bishop, 2 of my favorites. Again, this edition of Florida Daily TV brought to you by Farah and Farah, serving you since 1979. Lawyers you can trust. Go take a look at them statewide. Offices statewide. That's farahandfarah.com. Thanks again to all of you in another edition of Florida Daily TV right here on floridadaily.com.
When we come to work in the morning, we don't think about all the money we've won against big tobacco, big pharma, or the insurance industry. That's in the past. Life faces forward, and so do we. It's been said, to live in the past is to die in the present. What really matters is what we can do for you and your family right now, right this second. So call us, Farah and Farah, here for you, here for good.